The Joel Fernandez Show is a talk show channeled spontaneously from source to edify and help raise the vibrations of truthers, starseeds, Christic alchemists, and others who have seen through this illusionary matrix into messianic consciousness by discussing hidden knowledge, higher dimensions, and manifesting so that we can shine our light for everyone to see and co create the earth that we know we actually deserve to live in. Don't! I gotta go! I'm working on the show! Welcome, everybody, to the 47th episode of The Joel Fernandez Show. I'm Joel Fernandez, and today we've got a very exciting episode. I mean, it's obviously exciting because it's the 47th episode, and that's a really good number in my books. But really, this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Santos Bonacci. That's right, the very man who I consider my philosophical grandfather because of all that he taught me, especially early on and during my awakening in 2012. I want to dedicate the show to Santos Bonacci and his work and Prisca Theologia. I remember watching all of his presentations in Geelong, and that just blew my mind. And now, here I am interviewing him. I've been waiting to make this episode for quite a while now, almost, you know what, since I started this show, and things have finally lined up. You know, schedules have been really busy with the lockdown and just like waking up to who I'm here to be, manifesting more of that, stepping into more of my destiny. But man, this episode is going to be very exciting for a lot of truth seekers, a lot of people digging deep, and especially when it comes down to understanding not only the actual calendar, the stellar clock in the sky, but also who we are as sovereigns and how to reclaim our dominion, how to take back our strawman, and breaking those shackles of the literalist stories that institutions have been shoving down our throats, and tapping into that kind of power, that kind of infinite wealth that's been our birthright all along, but that the Vatican has been squatting on, calling us incompetence. But now we're reclaiming our sovereignty and really stepping up as the kings and priests in this earth plane. And literally, how to tap into wealth like we've never accessed before. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it, folks. Enjoy this interview I did with Santos Bonacci. Welcome to Joel's Bowl. Well, I just actually just wanted to know like how you're doing. Like I know you're not in Australia anymore. Are you in Mexico now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because I know especially like Melbourne is just crazy there.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Calgary in Canada.
Right.
Yeah,
It's getting crazy there too.
yeah, Calgary's they're just overstepping everything as much as they can. Yeah.
It's the zombie apocalypse, brother.
Basically, yeah. That's what got me into all of this once again because when all of this happened, I realized like, I learned about all that Agenda 21 and everything, and I remember you were the one that actually woke me up to a whole lot. Like I really got to thank you for all of that stuff. Even just like I was already like learning about veganism and stuff, but then I saw your vegan demon slayer series. That one really fit a lot of pieces together, and then you spoke about like just how you're not even vaccinated, hey, at all.
I had a few when I was a kid.
Okay. Yeah, because
Many.
yeah, because those ones like that was the first I heard anything about it, and then once I started looking more into it, I realized, of course the government never had our best interest in mind anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, I had like a major download back in 2012 where it was just like it came to me in a flash where I saw that, the Gregorian calendar and all that stuff was basically totally arbitrary. And right after that, I started looking into like the real like clock in the sky, understanding more of that, and then suddenly like I came across all of your presentations, the ones you did in Geelong.
Yep.
Yeah, all of those, like it was a major, like it was all major synchronicity. All of that just fit together, and the download that I had was pretty interesting because as everything came together, I just realized that because of processional slippage and all of that, somehow the constellations had to align with the tropical signs because as you know, Aries is always Aries on the spring equinox, but the constellation has shifted. So because of that, Pisces and all of that, it just doesn't align. So part of my the download that came to me was just using the constellations where they are in relationship to the actual tropical signs. And that all just fit together like it just came to me in a flash, really.
Right.
Yeah. And it of course it syncretizes with the Hebrew calendar and even like the Arabic lunar stations, the Chinese zodiac, all of that stuff. It just all fits right together. So that's
Sure.
so that's how I got into that. And then of course like talking about some of the other stuff that you talk about, just with like reclaiming our dominion, admiralty law, and all of that UCC and stuff. That opened a whole other door. So I was wondering if we could talk maybe a little bit about that.
Uh-huh.
Just like where to start in terms with how to like reclaim your strawman. Here's one thing, like a lot of my work also is digging up the real like metaphysical meanings of the scriptures and all of that stuff, because like I was raised in the church too, and all of that hidden knowledge is just kept from like the congregations, right?
Yeah.
So I was wondering, like, one major question. Like, I know that the strawman and that stuff, like, they spell it all caps, right? And then when you go to the scripture, like, Jehovah is translated in all caps. I'm wondering if that has anything to do in relationship to that. Are you aware
Of course, it removes the word from the sentence because it's not English anymore.
Right.
So when you have a document that has two languages, it's null and void in law.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
they put dog Latin in with English, and therefore they're cancelling the whole Bible is now insignificant because of that procedure, which cancels its power by mixing the languages.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. So, like, how would you like recommend anybody reclaim their strawman? Basically, how would you go about starting that? Because I know, like, I watched your the videos when you were outside the courts and all of that stuff, and you mentioned something about getting a certificate of live birth, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
Once you get that, you can start the process. Rebecca on our academy, she knows how to do it the perfect way, and
Okay.
then we're going to have Nazariah join us soon. She'll also have a very, very simple system, 3-step system.
Okay, nice. And that's on what's the website for that?
Syncretism Society.
Okay. Okay. Right. Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Like, I know because I was looking into that, and there's just a whole bunch of information, but it's kind of hard just to get started, and it's like a lot. The learning curve is pretty steep once you just find this out.
Yeah, it's best to go to people who know exactly what they're doing, like Rebecca.
Yeah, because I've seen videos of people try it in court, and then they just get their ass handed to them, basically.
Yep.
Yeah, so you really got to know what you're doing and like know from the beginning how you're gonna do it.
Yep.
Yeah. And does that tie in at all with like the grammar syntax? Do you know about that stuff?
Yeah, it does, but that's a whole other system. Either you follow that or you follow another one system, but you've got to stick with one system.
Right.
It works. It's more complicated though.
Yeah, and you really can't make any mistakes with that, I hear.
Yep.
Yeah. But yeah, see, like the main thing that I do is beside the calendar, like getting into like I go back to the original languages when I'm reading the Bible. And like a whole lot has just been covered up, and it's all like when I read it, I'm reading like a manual on how to manifest, basically, right? It's like the Great Awakening.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that the churches don't want people to know about. They don't want us to know our true power, and of course, like the court system is just the Inquisition, basically morphed, right?
Yep.
The same empire, the same system, and it's like they're sitting on the gold mine, but they're not even, like, they don't care about it, and they don't want anybody else to know about it either.
That's right.
Yeah. On top of that, fitting it in with the calendar and, like, researching, like, stuff like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, stuff like that, it's all starting to make sense now. Like, there's no denying, like, this is the Great Awakening.
Yep.
Yeah. Like, my calendar is a bit different, but it basically just follows, like, it's not my calendar, it's just like what came to me as the sun goes through each of the constellations.
Yeah.
The constellations obviously are different sizes, like, than the 30-day tropical signs, but because it's shifted, it's basically like a new meaning for the old constellations in relationship to where it sits on the tropical chart right now.
Yeah, well, it's just another system which interacts with the fixed system of the tropical. The tropical always dominates.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I really want to get more into that. Like, you'd probably have to see my stuff to understand, like, where I'm coming from. But it basically is a calendar that follows each month as the sun enters each actual, like, constellation sign, like the sidereal zodiac, but not like, because I know the Vedic one still uses the old names, like basically like the old system, but it's shifted so that Aries is no longer at the spring equinox.
Yep.
But mine is basically like it's always at Aries, right? So for example, instead of the fish, like, which is the water sign, it's become like when you look at the two fish, right? It's like two fish going out from the center point. It's basically like two flowers, but they're like fire flowers, and that represents like cardinal fire, like the blossoming of that first month.
For sure.
And then from there it goes on to each of the 12 signs, because it's literally like the full thing just downloaded to me. The 4 quarters, like the 4 seasons, each of the equinoxes and the solstices are like these cornerstones, and then each of the months correspond to like the gemstones, and that ties back to like the New Jerusalem and stuff like that. So it's all syncretic, though. It's amazing how it all fits together. Yeah. Because I would love to like collaborate with you and maybe get more into just how we can reclaim our sovereignty, both the legal way, but primarily in reclaiming the spirituality that the churches have just been hiding. Like, they're monopolizing spirituality, but at the same time they're not sharing any of that.
Yeah.
So I think busting that fiction would be one of the main ways for people to see through the illusion.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. That would be good.
Yeah, and we can talk about a whole lot of other stuff too as time goes on. Like, veganism is a real big thing for me. Like, that on top of just looking into things was one of the major catalysts to wake me up too.
Right.
You know, because like they normalize meat eating and all of that stuff. They normalize all these things that keep us in this lower state of consciousness. And obviously it's to their benefit so that they can control us. But once you step out of that, it's just like basically opens the doors of perception. It's like, you step through the door and you're hit with the light all of a sudden. That on top of cannabis used to be illegal here in Canada. As soon as that happened, then I realized, there's something going on with the government legalizing it. But it's still like that first question, right? Like, why was this illegal all the time when, alcohol and all this other stuff. Like you could do all of that stuff, no problem.
Yeah, right.
So all of these questions really like triggered this major awakening. And then as soon as that happened, like, it's just like the whole calendar was just downloaded to me. It literally came like actually I had like a kind of vision where that came through.
Right.
And it was almost like reading the book of Revelation, but it's like my own revelation where I saw all of this stuff unfold, and it tied in with like a bunch of political stuff that had happened, like false flags, like 9/11 and flat Earth, and all of that kind of stuff fit in together. And once I put all that together, like I started this journey, and I never even dreamed that I'd be here now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
All right. Well, I'll look forward to getting that off you.
Yeah, I'll send it to you. What it is basically like the graphic for the calendar. It's basically like the circle with all the signs, all the constellations mapped out and everything. And then there's a few documents that I've put together where I outline, let's see here. I outline each of the, like, of course, the tropical signs and their correspondence. Then the zodiacal signs. Each of the month has like a festival almost, but that's like the opening of each month. Then after that, it goes through the correspondences with the Chinese mansions. Then like each of the full moons of the year, the Arabic stations. And there's a series like where the 7 days repeat throughout the year. There's like a 13 times 7 times 4 that makes up the whole year. The 4 quarters, like the 4 seasons, and then 13-day series. And so I outlined that. And then finally it's like for each year, of course, you have the eclipses. And then when each planet, or so-called planet, enters each of the tropical signs and all of that stuff. So those go along with it, but the main thing is just the calendar and the cycle. And one other thing is like keeping with the Christ within and all of that stuff. I've also marked that on the calendar too. Like for myself, it's in there too, but it follows like each of the 12, either 12 or 13, right, of times per year where that is at it. I guess the crux of each of those cycles. Because that's another major thing that just clicked for me, was just how all of that interpretation actually follows in the body. And the spine, the Jordan River, of course, Bethlehem, all of that stuff, major stuff, of course, that the beast never wants their people to know about.
True.
Yeah.
Well, this is the world that the controllers have manufactured, contrived, because it's the easiest way to get into people's heads, to get into their minds, and dumb them down, and produce what I call chattel and sheeple. You see, Aries is the cerebrum, and Taurus, the bull, is the cerebellum. Right? Cerebram, cerebul, ram and bull. And from the ram and the bull, who are horned animals, you get, the ram is a symbol of, well, the ramp. Ramp and ramming things comes from the ram and his horns. And the bull, of course, you know how the bull charges and uses its horns. So you've got these animals that represent action and force, and what they've done is they've reduced the sheep into a sheeple, and the cow and its virtues into a chattel. And they'll tell you in their contracts, they'll put chattel in there, because they want to own all the chattel. So these good animals that have virtues, all animals have virtues. This is why the Egyptians had, a jackal-headed god, that have a crocodile-headed god, because those animals have got virtues, godly virtues, and as humans do. So we are basically just honouring that virtue. But see, the animals weren't meant to be eaten. And the animals that we do eat are the very animals that turn us into the animals that they want us to be. This is why the Jews and the Muslims will not eat swine, but they're allowed to give it and sell it to the Goyim because that's their law. And simply because if they're dumb enough to eat swine and become a swine, because you are what you eat, that's how they've turned humanity into swine. They give you beef so that you can be a chattel, part of their property. They give you mutton so you can be a sheeple and follow along. They give you fish so you can be in the element of water, ignorant. Water is considered to be ignorance, and air is, we are breathing air. Man breathes air. He doesn't live in the water, he lives in air. So air is the symbol of intelligence. So fish is to, the Egyptians never ate fish because they said, well, why? We become stupid when you eat fish, because they're dumb. They come from an element which is unknown to us. You know, we don't operate in that element, so we shouldn't eat from that element. Rabbits make you a rabbit, run like a rabbit. Chicken, so you can be chicken-livered coward. Goat, so they can make you a sacrificial goat and a scapegoat, as they say in their great cry for war. On you go, onward, Christian soldiers, off you go to war. We will make the uniforms as we've ever done before. And so, they'll tell you that you can sit in a cafe and have bacon and eggs, and you're sophisticated. You can have a nice latte, cappuccino, or something sophisticated, and you're sitting there and you're eating a pig's bum, and you are supposed, you imagine that you're intelligent. This is all done deliberately, and not only have they genetically modified all the breeds that we recognise, the pink pig, the Roman elite, they hybridised the hog, the wild hog, with human DNA, and made the pink, conventional pig that we have out of human DNA. And so it's really cannibalism. It's the lowest, absolutely the lowest form of food you can eat. So very important to modify what you eat as you do all things like this.
Some pretty interesting stuff shared, and it's like there's just so much more that I really want to get into. This is probably just the first part. Like, there's going to be a lot of stuff being exposed just as we break through and start to expose whatever was hidden. It's like everything that was hidden for generations, for almost like millennia, if we really trace it back to the Tower of Babel. Like, this manipulation has been going on even since the Garden of Eden, guys. Even since the Garden of Eden. It's like that original lie, especially when we're talking about sovereignty, that original lie saying, if you do this, you will be like Elohim. But quite frankly, they were already created in the image of Elohim. It's pretty crazy how that all ties together, actually. But there's so much more that we can just tap into. It's been hidden from us, and it's like constantly being programmed out of us. Like, today I'm recording this on the 11th, and today is actually Remembrance Day in Canada, and we remember, of course, the blood that was shed for freedom. When we really think about it, it's like freedom doesn't come without a price. And it's funny because today I went to the store, and there was like, those LED signs on the side of the road, and it said, freedom doesn't come free. And I just thought, like, these are the exact same signs that said to social distance, to wear the muzzle, all of that stuff. And I'm like, what a paradox. We're literally living in the Twilight Zone. It really feels like, what's going to happen? Like, I honestly feel like right now we're at the crux of everything, where at the same time this new world is being born, we're seeing the old world crumble. It's literally the end of the world and the beginning of the world. It's like Charles Dickens said, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Like, really, I just have to stop and scratch my head. Like, sometimes you just have to, wonder, like, what's going on? Do people even think, or is there something in the poison that is actually numbing their minds? That honestly seems more likely. When we really get down to it, it's almost like there are two races of people. I don't really want to say that, but it's almost like they're engineering a secondary race. And that ties in with the live session I did last week, like 8 days ago, where I'm talking about, like, the genetic altering that's been going on since the days of the Nephilim. That's basically it. Just the Nephilim have tried to rewrite our genome because, like, they can't create something out of nothing. Kingdom of Darkness cannot create anything out of nothing. This is the nature of darkness and the nature of light. Light is, and the darkness is only the absence of that light. But it's almost like they're just creating more and more manipulation and people being docile to whatever narrative. And of course, the key to that is fear. It's like Goebbels said when he was put on trial, like, how did you get all these people to just play along with the narrative and to be complacent? He said it was very easy. Just give them something to be afraid of. Once they're afraid of it, they're looking to you for the answer. And they'll carry out the most atrocious atrocities against their fellow man. And like today, like, I went to the store. I was the only one not muzzled. Like, I wore the poppy because of what that represents. Like, it's that blood for our freedom. And I'm going to share that poem after I end this episode because it's just so important. Like, of course, when you really get down to it, the young generation was manipulated to go to war when the kings and the presidents, they never go to war. But again, they don't have any qualms shedding innocent blood. So that's a whole other issue. Like Rudyard Kipling said, if any question why we died, tell them our fathers lied. When you're in the physical world, like, you don't understand the manipulation, but when it's too late and you're already on the other side, you realize just how duped and manipulated you were. But that aside, like, I went to the store and I was the only one without a muzzle, and I had a chat with the girls at the front counter, and they never said anything. In fact, they were so friendly. They answered all my questions, but I was prepared, wearing that poppy. And there were even other employees in the store that came up to me. Like, I was browsing in the supplement aisle and, someone came up to me and said, do you need any help? They never said anything. Customers, they kind of looked, but they never even looked like weird. Like, what is this guy doing, Because it's that day that we remember those sacrifices that actually paid for our freedoms. And if we're not free, like, we're already occupied territory. And literally, this is the Third World War, and we're looking at it right now. They're just not fighting with tanks and bayonets. They're fighting with media. They're fighting with lies. They're fighting to get those of us that would rat out each other, on the side of darkness. And quite frankly, there are a lot of Karens like that out there. But the more you walk with light, the more you seek divine source, and the more you tap into that living logos that should be living in you. If you have it living in you, it will manifest through you. It's like you can't even gel with these kind of other dimensionalities. That's kind of what I see it as now. It's almost like a totally different frequency when, if you're vibrating at a certain frequency, you just can't harmonize with that lower frequency. It just doesn't meet you there. Even if, those other people are in the store, they never come into confrontation with you. It's like someone said once, it's like, why do murderers exist and why do people get murdered? Well, the people that get murdered are actually vibrating on the same vibration as the murderer to be that kind of victim. And it's a subconscious thing. It's an inner kind of state of being. But when we really get down to it and we really tap into what our state of being is, and it takes being honest, like, that's the real issue. It takes really being honest and really being sincere. And once you're really sincere about all this kind of stuff, you'll really see past the illusion, and you'll start to see, like, I accept these kind of things in my life. Like, if there's anything in your life that you're accepting, just be honest and say, why is this the way it is? Why is this the way it is? Why am I feeling this way? Why am I experiencing this? What have I allowed to grow as a garden, the garden of your mindset? What kind of paradigms have you planted? What kind of seeds have you planted, right? What are you doing in the physical world that corresponds with this kind of harvest? Really get honest with yourself. Really do some inner work. Really tap in, Take 15 minutes, half an hour, even an hour. Just shut off all outer distractions and really get serious, man. If you want to make a change, it's worth it. It's worth it taking that little bit of time and saying, what am I sowing in order to manifest this? Like I said, that conversation with the girls at the front desk, like I manifested that because I set myself for a couple days before I went, actually. I didn't plan on going today, but I think just going today added to that kind of harvest where it was so synchronistic that I harmonized with them in such a way. Like I manifested that because I knew that I would have this conversation, and I asked Source to actually give me the right words to say. And of course, you're planning, you're like, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that. And for a while, I was also like, well, if there's a confrontation, I'm going to point to my poppy and I'm going to say, are we in the Third World War and all this kind of stuff. But then I'm like, just let Source speak. And when I got there, like, I would say like 70-80% of what I planned to say never came out. And sure, some of that stuff might have been good. Some of that stuff might have exposed a few things. But you know what? It didn't even matter at the end of the day, because once I tapped in and once I did that preliminary work, everything in the physical followed. And I know that even that conversation, even the other, even me just walking in, beaming that truth, beaming that light, I just know that that did something, and that planted seeds in other people's lives. I'm not going to see the harvest today. They're not going to manifest the harvest today, but those seeds are planted. And this is the nature of seed time and harvest. There's that time. We think seed harvest, but there's that time. Even when you're growing a garden, man, you germinate the seeds, you water the seeds, you tend to the weeds, and a few months have to pass before you start to see those little bitty carrots coming to fruition, or whatever it is. Back in the day when it was still against the law, like I planted some cannabis seeds. That was what really woke me up to the time involved. And of course, like my mom grew gardens since the time I was little, and I loved the gardens. I loved all the different plants and all of that stuff.
And here are our vegetables. Just walk along, Mom. Okay? Just walk along. I'll go. Light on? Okay. Okay, guys. That's the butterfly, okay? Don't be worried of it. Here's okay. This stuff, all these 2 rows are sister. These bumpy things, they're so bumpy. And all this blue-green or green-blue is kohlrabi, sliced and furry. And these are uprooted beans. Yuck. Don't taste very nice. And these are, what do you call them? Fluffy. They're kind of fluffy. And they're zucchini. And here is some more sister, all of them. And here is mint. Okay, and it's nice and smooth. Those are 2 beans. All the time I open this shit, I see a spider web. And here is peas, my favorite. They feel like some kind of more smoother than beans. And here's our picnic table. I'm going to show you the spider web, okay? Okay, here is our... Oh, yuck! I wouldn't even go there, that spider web.
But even knowing that growing up, I really didn't get that deep connection with the process of planting a seed, watching it germinate, watching the blade come out, watching the stalk grow, watching those fan leaves come out, and all of that stuff. It's a process, and it was amazing because it woke me up. And of course, as you're growing plants, you get that spiritual connection with the plants because, yeah, they're alive on a different level. And man, I think some of the deepest intuition that I've tapped into was in communicating with cannabis without having ingested cannabis. That's a whole other issue. And I don't use cannabis the way I did before. Like, honestly, I had to stop because of certain issues that came up in regards to my digestion because I used to eat it. And it's a pretty tough plant to digest, but when you take it naturally, like eating is way, way better than inhaling the combusted vapors of it. But even that, man, even that just shifted my paradigm and allowed me to realize, there's like one lie, and it's a really big lie, and that it's cannabis is bad. Well, there's a lot more to it than that, but it starts you questioning everything. And once I started questioning everything, like back then I was a heavy drinker. Like I would come home every night after work and buy like a Mickey of vodka, and not just vodka, straight vodka, but like that Kahlua kind of stuff. It was actually called Black Russian. I don't know if they still have it anymore, but I would drink that. And after like a couple of years of doing that, I was literally borderline diabetic, if not diabetic, just without having been diagnosed. And my life was falling apart, man. Relationships were falling apart. I couldn't even manage going to work. And back then I was working at a print shop, just loading paper in the copiers and making sure that the copier never jammed, sending files to the printers. Most of the time was just spent sitting around doodling or planning these flash animations, which used to be really popular back in that time.
Joel, want some kimchi? Yeah, sure. That's only, the 5th time today?
And of course, that also prepped me for editing and getting into like multimedia presentations and animating shorts and all this kind of stuff, editing audio over video and all that kind of stuff. Like, it was a growth process, but I couldn't even manage my job. And I remember one day I went into work and I was like so dizzy I couldn't even function. Literally every day I would eat like a huge breakfast, then by like 9 or 10 in the morning I was super hungry again, and I would go to Tim's or McDonald's. Yeah. And I would do that just to get coffee for the rest of the team. But while I was there, I would gorge down like 2 Egg McMuffins or a couple breakfast bagels. Like, it was insane, like how much I ate. And then I would have like a huge lunch. And then after lunch, I would have like those instant noodle ramen bowls. And then I would come home. I remember like ordering a full pizza on my way home. I would eat the pizza. Then I would eat other food when I got home. Sometimes I would just sit down and eat one of those whole fried chickens.
Got any fried chicken?
Best damn chicken in the state.
Bring me 4 fried chickens and a Coke.
You want chicken wings or chicken legs?
4 fried chickens and a Coke.
Looking back, man, I'm so glad Source woke me up and got me out of that. And once I started questioning, once I started thinking, and it was really, honestly, the cannabis, because I was at the lowest point in my life. I just come out of a serious breakup. Well, what used to be a serious relationship ended with a serious breakup. And like, I was devastated because, yeah, I'd been done wrong. And
I'm telling you, it's making us look like a bunch of fools.
So what do you suggest we do?
Change it.
You can't. You can't just go ahead and change them. Marriage vows have been the same since before cable television. You can't just change them. That'd be like having Madonna rewrite the songs, or asking Guns N' Roses to add a few words to Amazing Grace.
Guns N' Roses. Amazing Grace.
Look at the stats, people. No one believes until death do us part anymore. I say we come up with a new marriage vow, one that can accommodate today's society.
Yeah, something to fit the times.
Something like, till a major disagreement or something.
Or till you wake up one morning and, oh my gosh, who is this ugly person I'm sleeping next to?
Till someone with a better salary comes along. Till my freedom is hindered in any way.
Till you're a big fatso. Till I don't want to play with you anymore. Till you're stupid. Till I get a new best friend.
Okay, let's think about it. We'll make a decision next week.
but really, it was so abusive, it was so narcissist, and even to this day, it's just like trying to rub things in. Like the craziest stuff I won't get into because, you know, that's behind me, and every time it comes up, I have a higher power that I tap into, and that just nullifies anything. And it's literally caused me to manifest my best life yet. I'm starting to collaborate with people that are actually like-minded, and we're starting to build a community. Like, this thing is actually coming together, and people that I'm working with are actually looking at getting some land. Like, how can this even happen if it wasn't possible? If the 9 to 5 was all that was there for me? And I really thought that, like, I gotta have a house, I gotta work as an architect, gotta raise a family. Like, all of that will come, but I have to have that foundation where, before I never used to connect with people talking about sports or talking about TV shows. And like, I got the TV shows, I watched them, I knew what they were talking about, but I could never connect on that level because I was always looking at something much, much deeper. And now I realize, like, Source guided me. Source kept me from those kind of distractions and really allowed me to tap into something deeper in my own growth process, which ultimately flourished to what it is today. Because back at my first awakening, back in 2012, it was like I had nobody to rely on that was really tapped into these deeper aspects of existence. And I started learning about veganism. I started learning about, what was going on behind the scenes with government, with pharmaceuticals. That was a big awakening because of the cannabis. And at that time it was illegal and prosecuted. Like, Canada wasn't as bad as the States, but it was just like a major red flag. I'm like, why are they fighting this peace-inducing substance when alcohol, which, like I said, I was so blinded by, was freely available. And it was promoted. Like, you'd go to the club and drinks. This drinking society was just everywhere. And I just thought, like, why are they fighting peace? And I got into like learning really what happened during the 60s, really what happened during the war on drugs. And then from there, you know, all other false flags just opened up a whole new, deeper understanding of who we are. And from there, it's like all of that added up to where I am today. All of those were laying a foundation. And for those 7 years where I was just, you know, vegan without anybody to talk to, I knew that I was laying those foundations. When I had the revelation of the true calendar, it didn't come to fruition right away. Like, I wasn't sharing it with anybody. Even my own family thought I was like way off into some kind of other stuff. But I was like, hey, this is actually biblical. And when you're not using it for, you know, kingdom of darkness gains, as in like horoscope astrology, which is basically like entities lying through their teeth, if they had physical teeth. But when you really get into it, it's just like a time clock in the sky. And when you realize that, you realize like the time that they've given us is totally farcical. I mean, you know, the 12-hour day or the 24-hour day is another issue. Yeah, there's like 24 divisions, but it's not the hours that they divide it into. And when you really look into it, what's up with daylight savings time? That just shows you how arbitrary their time system is. The Gregorian calendar, right? January 1st doesn't correspond with anything in the sky, any time. It doesn't correspond with any of that. 8 days after the winter solstice, well, that's the circumcision of the year, yeah, but it doesn't correspond with any major point, like the vernal equinox, right? That used to be the beginning of the year back in the day. Then they changed it. And of course, like, the kingdom of darkness knows this, and they have their own calendar. So when people really tap into a deeper understanding of time and the calendar, that's the first thing they find. You know, you find things like Imbolc, Walpurgisnacht, Beltane, Samhain, Yule. All of that stuff is because the kingdom of darkness knows the times and uses the times. But you know, we as a sovereign species, the real beings of light, have come so far from understanding these times that we're using the kingdom of darkness's times to understand where we're coming from. Well, that's over. That's over. And I've proved that with my calendar. It's not my calendar, but it's the calendar that came to me. And if you're tapped in, you'll get the same thing. You're not going to be ruled by the kingdom of darkness's festivals. You're going to realize that the festivals that are outlined in the ancient scriptures, in the Hebrew scriptures, they correspond with the actual year. The book of Enoch, the book of Jubilees. And I'm going to make a video talking about this, probably in a reasoning sesh, where I explain like the real time and how time has just been bastardized by these institutions that claim a religious heritage, but they're sitting on a gold mine and they're not partaking it off themselves, but they're not sharing it with the congregation. They're not sharing it with the world. They consider us incompetents. And that ties right back into what Santos said. You know, we have our birth weight in gold as our inheritance. That's the beginning of it. On top of that, we have our skill set. On top of that, we have our ability to actually create community. We're slaving for 40 hours a week, lining someone else's pockets. But actually, if we built a community together, it wouldn't take more than like 6 hours a week, maybe even less, just contributing to that community. And we'd have way more than we could ever imagine. That's the real life. And when you're working with a community, it's not work. You're just doing what you got to do to live. Like you're either growing food or you're, you know, making tents or fabrics or whatever it is. Some people engineer machines, right? You can harness these things if you know how to harness wind energy, water energy. Engineering is a part of that community, you know? It's not just to say, let's all smoke pot and just live off the land, off of flowers and fresh acorns.
They all come out to groove about, be nice and have fun and listen.
I mean, you know, that is one level. And of course, breatharianism is also another level. Just living off of that sunlight, solar gazing, grounding. That's all part of it. But when we really work together as a community, we can build those roads. We can manufacture machines that are beyond anything that this earth raping society actually pushes on us. And it's not like we have a choice in the matter. Like, you know, I drive this car, but it runs on gasoline. And if I'm like looking for alternatives, they're not readily available. When there was vehicles that ran on water power back in the early 1900s.
Passing Rouen Cathedral, something almost literally out of Jules Verne. This car can cruise at speeds of up to 70-odd miles an hour. On water. The energy factor, of course, is hydrogen, which, as any schoolboy knows, is contained in water in the ratio of 2 parts to 1 of oxygen. A formula described by Jules Verne more than 100 years ago. So what have we been waiting for? The engine can also power a generator, to provide light and heat. And what's more, it's pollution-free. The car's already run for well over 1,000 miles, and the promoters say the scheme is practical and a commercial proposition. Fuel on tap, in fact.
We had electric vehicles way back when. The first vehicles actually ran on steam. Steam was zero pollution. You know, some of them burned coal, but I mean, when you really get down to it, they had electric vehicles way back when. And Ford's first car was a hempmobile.
Amongst the thousands of products made from hemp, one of the most extraordinary is Henry Ford's plastic car. Built in 1941, it contained cellulose fibers derived from hemp, sisal, and wheat straw. The plastic was lighter than steel, yet could withstand 10 times the impact without denting.
Which burned biofuel, which also has zero emissions. Not just that, but when you grow the crop to harvest the biofuel, it actually cuts down that carbon cycle and puts more oxygen out into the air. It's like the same thing that happened with Bell or Edison and Tesla. Like, when you look into that, like, they just decimated his life work. What about orgone energy and Wilhelm Reich? You know, that kind of technology is available to the 1%, upper class, elites, the bloodsuckers of society. But it's been kept from us for ages. You know, they can just go into a med bed and come out with their DNA restored. But here we are getting mRNA therapy that actually bastardizes our genetics. Well, you know what? I won't get into that because that world is falling. That world is behind us. And as we manifest this new world, we are literally seeing the new potential just blossom before us. So that is the real sovereignty that we're stepping into. That is the real potential. And as we step into that, man, we are starting to see massive gains.
And as always, keep making those vegan gains.
So I'm going to end the show here. I know that there's a whole lot happening. So even if anything looks discouraging, even if there's like a huge exposure that looks like, you know, this is the end of it all. Even if they shut down the power grid, guys, just know that Source has got this and it's all unfolding so that light can extinguish darkness. We're seeing darkness being extinguished, and we got to know that we are on the right side of history, and we got to trust that power in us that's already manifested these connections. Like, the very fact you're watching these videos means that a connection has been made, and you're acting on these connections. You're tapping into more of this energy. You're harnessing more of that frequency for your own life. And as you do, you're going to start to see it reflect in the world around you. Like I said, when I went to the store, it was just reflected back to me. And yeah, there was stress. There was anxiety, expecting maybe there might be a confrontation. I got to be prepared. But when you sow the causal seeds you reap the physical harvest that is in line with those causal seeds. Don't give in to fear. Don't give in to doubt. Just know your power. Tap into that and you will manifest that very state of being. So I love you guys. I'll check you in another show, another video, another reasoning sesh, whatever it is. Stay optimistic. Know that Source has got this, and know that we win because Source has won. The living logos has overcome. So with that being said, I decree blessings, prosperity, peace, shalom, wholeness, abundance, and manifesting your best life in this physical plane right now. Receive it because you don't deserve anything less. This is my prayer. This is my decree. This is what I send forth to all of you guys every single day. So tap in and really get to manifesting that utopia that we've come here to experience. I love you guys from the bottom of my heart. I really do, because we're all in this high vibe tribe together. We're all manifesting our best life yet. We're all born for such a time as this, and we are creating Earth 2.0. With that being said, I'm going to sign out. Agape, salaam, namaste, hotep. In Flanders fields. In Flanders fields the poppies blow, between the crosses row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If you break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.